before I start today's setup guide for Simple Launcher for Windows PC. If you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation setup guides like this one you're watching today. That just means you'll get notified every time I release a new setup guide, and it also helps out my channel too. So we're looking at Simple Launcher today, and as the title suggests, it is simple and straight to the point, no frills attached to this one. So we're going to need to download the front end itself, we're going to need to download Retroarch for this setup guide, although having said that, this system actually supports standalone emulators too to launch our games. We're also going to need to potentially download a Windows runtime package, and of course we need some games too. So first of all, what we're going to do is just head over and download the latest release of Simple Launcher. And you can download the release as of a couple of days ago. The development team released 2.12.0. So if you just download the zip for now. Next up, what I'm going to suggest doing is downloading Retroarch, and again, links are going to be in my description for everything in this setup guide today. Now I'm going to download the portable version of this. We got download 64-bit or 32-bit. I'm not going to download installer version. If you want to download installer, that's fine, but I'm going to just download portable. So 64 and 32-bit. Now, if you're not sure which one to go for, the simplest way to find out which version you need is just going into your search bar, and from here just type in system information, and right just here under system type you'll find either say x86 or x64. If you've got x64, that means you've got a 64-bit computer. If you've got x86, that means you're going to need to download the 32-bit version. So I'm going to download the 64-bit, and if I just left click, that's going to download for you. I've already downloaded this prior to this video, and we're also going to need a game. So I recommend itch.io for the latest homebrew games. And yes, we're going to do C64, although this setup guide is going to be pretty much standard for setting up particular systems within this launcher. So I'm going to just download Lester, which is a very new C64 game, and here we go, got this. Now what we need to do first then is actually start extracting things. So I've got Simple Launcher just here, and when I downloaded it, it downloaded into a zip folder. So if I just double left click on this, this is our contents of Simple Launcher. What I'm going to do is create a new folder on my desktop, so right click, new folder, and I'm going to call this Simple Launcher. You can call this whatever you like, but for simplicity reasons, let's just call it Simple Launcher. And what I'm going to do is then go into that zip folder. If I press Ctrl and A together, that's going to highlight everything, and I'm going to just drag over and drop into that Simple Launcher folder. Okay, so we're now done with this, so we can get rid of that release zip folder. And what we need to do then is go into Simple Launcher, and we're just going to set a new directory for this. So inside of here, I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to call this folder ROMs. Now inside of ROMs, what I'm going to do is create another folder, and I'm going to just call this folder C64. So new folder C64. Now if you want to set up different systems, for example Mega Drive, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, MAME or whatever, what you need to do, just for simplicity, just so everything's within a single folder, is just create your system folders in here. For example, I could click and go to create another folder called NES, but I'm not going to do NES for now. I'm going to stick with C64, and if I go in that C64 folder, I'm going to drag my Lester C64 game inside, and here we go. Now some games you download have got various numbers after them. So for example, this game version 1.1. Now when it comes to adding artwork within Simple Launcher, we need to match the game's title with the artwork. So what I'm going to do is just edit this game, rename it rather, and just get rid of this. So we're just simply left with the name of the game, Lester.prg program. So that's the directory for the ROMs or the game setup. So let's actually open up Simple Launcher. And Windows protected your PC. If we just go to more info, run anyway. Now it's going to ask you, like I said at the start of the video, that it might potentially ask us to download and install Windows Desktop Runtime 8.0.3. So what we need to do here is just download it. And this is then going to start downloading the package. I've already done this and I've got it on my desktop, and I'm going to install it. Cool, so that's been now successfully installed. And just remember, if you don't install this, Simple Launcher isn't going to launch at all. So you'll need this as a prerequisite. So close. Now if I go to open up Simple Launcher again, we're now inside Simple Launcher. So like I say, very simple and straight to the point, just like the title of the program tells us. One last thing before we start configuring different directories, we actually need Retroarch for this. So what I'm going to do then is make another folder within that Simple Launcher folder I've created, and I'm just going to call this one Emulators, or Emulator, whatever you like. And I've got Retroarch Portable 64-bit version here. What I'm going to do is just extract that Retroarch folder inside of that Emulators folder I've just created. Okay, so that's now been extracted into the Emulators folder, and we can also delete that Retroarch archive, and Windows runtime can also go as well. Okay, next thing we need to do before going into Simple Launcher is actually open up Retroarch. So Retroarch is obviously placed into my Emulators folder, and we can open up Retroarch itself just by scrolling down retroarch.exe. And if you're new to Retroarch, don't be too daunted about it. It's a fairly simple program to use, and if you're interested in Retroarch, I've done a lot of setup guides. So we need to download something in Retroarch called cores. Now just think of cores as little emulators that run exclusively with Retroarch. They power our games. So we're inside of Retroarch. Now what we need to do is download core. So we're going to go to main menu and just go down to online updater, core downloader. Now from here, this is all your cores for Retroarch. So if you're using, say, Retroarch on an Android or a new style TV, you might not necessarily see all of these cores I can see right here. A different version of Retroarch has different cores compatible with particular platforms. But anyways, I'm going to download a Commodore 64 core, and let's just say again, for example, if you're running or you want to run, say, Nintendo NES or Master System, then you need to download the relevant core. But we're going to simplify this just by downloading C64 Vice times 64. So if I download this core, we've got a hashtag there, and that just tells us it's now been installed. And if I come out of here, I'm pressing B on my controller, we're also going to need to set up Retroarch with a full screen. So we're going to go to settings, video, and down to full screen mode. Start in full screen, we need to enable this. I'm going to press A on my controller. Okay, so what we're going to do is by pressing B button, come out of Retroarch, and from main menu, which is highlighted in green, I just recommend going to configuration file, pressing A, save current configuration, and then press B to come out and down to quit. Okay, we can now go inside of Simple Launcher. Okay, so we're now inside of Simple Launcher, and this is the first thing you're going to see. So very much so simple, straight to the point pretty much. So let's just go to select a system. Little pop-up saying that it's not been configured, directories aren't into the right places. So if we just go to OK, now the way to add systems and link things up within Simple Launcher is just a simple case of going to Edit System, and from here what we're going to do is go to Choose a System. If I drop down to Commodore 64 for now, because that's what I'm setting up, now we're going to find everything just here, and we got system name Commodore 64, that's fine. We got system folder just here, and this is where our games need to be located. Now they're highlighted in red because it can't locate the D drive, which is saying where the games are stored. So what we need to do then is actually set this up to read from the path of where my Commodore 64 games are. And of course we created that ROMs folder in the Simple Launcher folder. So if we go to set system folder, it's on my desktop, and in my Simple Launcher folder, ROMs folder, I've got C64 just here. So if I just left click C64, select folder, and as we can see, that's now directed to the correct path of where my C64 game is. Next up, system is main. Well, we need to set this to false for this one anyways, because of course we're using a C64 core that I downloaded, which is Vice. This is nothing to do with main. So I'm going to leave this one to false. Format to search in the system folder. Now what we need to do just here is type in the names of the file extensions. Now my C64 game is a .prg program. So what we need to do then is start listing what files extensions this system can look for. So I'm going to just type in prg, comma, and I'm also going to type in prg in capitals, and also another comma. Now if you're going to be setting up something like Nintendo NES, then you might have a .NES file extension. If it's not listed there, then obviously do what I've done in just NES, NES, or whatever. Next up, what we need to do is leave emulator 1 name to Retroarch Vice _ 64, because this is going to be the core through Retroarch I'm going to be launching the C64 game with. Now under emulator 1 location, again, just like the system folder, it's in red, and this is because Simple Launcher can't locate the D drive because I don't have a D drive. So again, I need to set emulator 1 location, and from here I'm going to go back to the Simple Launcher folder. Inside of the emulators, I've got my Retroarch folder just here. And what we need to do once this folder is open is just go down and left click on retroarch.exe and go to open. And as we can see, just like ROMs, we've now got this, which is no longer red, and this is set up. Next thing we need to do is emulator 1 parameters. So again, this is locating this as D drive, and like we know, I don't have a D drive. So what we need to do then is actually edit this. So first thing we're going to need to do is copy a path and replace this part just here with the correct path. So I'm going to just come out of here just by going to save or update system, and OK. And if I just minimize this for now, I'm going to go into Retroarch, which is an emulators folder, and my cores, and here it is. So this is my core, and what I'm going to do is right click on that and copy as path. Now if I go back to edit system and choose system name, so we'll see Commodore 64 again. Now we're going to go back to emulator 1 parameters, and what I'm going to do is just highlight the first part just here, which is in quote marks. And if I just backspace that, I'm then going to press Ctrl V to paste in the correct location of where that core is to power my C64 game, and just delete one of those quotation marks. Next up, what we're going to do is just leave this for now and save them. OK. And if I just close out of this, and do you want to save a backup copy of the current configuration? Yes. And OK. So let's actually go to launch this. So select a system, Commodore 64, and the name of my game is Lester. Now we've got the alphabet just here. We can either go to all, and that's going to display my game, which has got no artwork yet, but I'm going to get onto that in a minute. And I can also define by going to the letters of the alphabet. So L, and here's my game. Again, if I go to O, there's nothing here because I don't have a Commodore 64 game beginning with O. So L for Lester. And I'm going to launch this game just by double left clicking. And here we go. We're now inside using Simple Launcher. Now just a little tip. But using Retroarch, we can actually fast forward. Okay, cool. So as we can see, this is working absolutely perfectly. Now we're inside of Retroarch and we can actually use the quick menu to do things. To do this, I've pressed the F1 key as well as the FN button on my keyboard to access the quick menu. Just very briefly, we can save states using Retroarch quick menu. If I just drop down to save states and press A on this, and state slot, I'm going to leave this to 0. There's 1,000 different slots we can save to. If I go to save state, and if I go back into the quick menu and load state, and to exit out of that game, I've just pressed the escape button on my keyboard twice, and that's brought us back to Simple Launcher. Now we're going to need some artwork, of course. This looks terrible as it is, and that's why I suggested editing your names of your games. Some cases we've got letters after the games, we got numbers, so we can now see Leicester, no artwork. So my simple solution for this is use something like Emumubis or Screen Scraper, download some art. Another way to do this is if we just go to Google Images or whichever search engine you use. I just type in Leicester C64, go to Images, and I can download some cover art here. So Leicester, and right click on the image, save image as, and you're also going to find that if you download images using something like Google, you're going to find lots of garbage like this we got just here. What I'm going to do is just delete this series of letters and numbers and just title this Leicester.png, and I'm going to save this to my Simple Launcher folder, Images folder, and if we just scroll down within the Images folder, this is all of the systems that Simple Launcher currently supports. So I need to find C64 or Commodore 64 folder and just save it in there. And if I just close out of Simple Launcher now and go back in, select System, Commodore 64, and letter L, here we go, we now have artwork for the game. Okay, so that's your basic setup for Simple Launcher. Now things get a little bit more complex when we're adding BIOS files, that type of thing. And what I'm going to do next is show you how to set up, say, PlayStation 1, which of course requires BIOS files. I'm also going to show you how to use a little program called CHDMan in case you've got lots of .bin files and Q files for, say, PlayStation 1. So what we're going to do first of all is just take a look at this page just here. This is the Retroarch Libretto Swan Station information, and just here we can find out which BIOS files we need for this. Of course, we're going to be running this through Retroarch again, and Swan Station is the name of the core. So recognize BIOS images. These are the BIOS images that we need for this. And whilst we're here on the internet, I'm going to just go to CHDMan, and you can download CHDMan from here. All you need to do is just download chdman.zip, but I'm going to get into that shortly. So now we know which core we need for PlayStation in Retroarch. What we're going to do is download the core. So go into Simple Launcher, Emulators, Retroarch, and we're going to go and open up Retroarch. Now from here, what we're going to need to do then is download that Swan Station core. So again, it's just literally a case of going to Online Updater, Core Downloader, and we're going to look for Swan Station. So I'm just using my D-pads down to scroll through these, and we're going to find Sony PlayStation Swan Station. If I just download this one, and now it's installed, and come back out, and of course go down to configuration file, and you want to save current configuration for this. And if I then quit out of Retroarch, so now we've got that core downloaded, what we're going to need to do next is go into that ROMs folder, and I'm going to create a new folder in here, just called PS1. And in this folder, I'm going to pop in my PlayStation game, which is Die Hard Trilogy. I'm going to just drag and drop that inside. And this is where CHDMan comes in. Now, as we can see, my game here has got lots of bin files. What I'm going to do is open up CHDMan, And the files I need to put inside of my game folder is CHDMan.exe, as well as the one below it, Q, GDI, ISO to CHD.bat. If I just drag and drop those two files into my Die Hard Trilogy folder, I'm going to just double left click on the .bat, and this is now compressing all those files into a single image which we can use inside of Retroarch. Okay, so once that program is closed, we should now find a CHD file for Die Hard Trilogy, and here it is. So what I'm going to do is Control and A, and I'm going to just left click on the CHD copy of Die Hard Trilogy and just delete everything else. And here we go, and just like the C64 game, I'm going to rename this because we don't want all those letters. So just diehardtrilogy.chd. Next thing we're going to need to do is actually put the BIOS files for Swan Station into the correct place. So it's going to be in Emulators, and your BIOS files are going to go into the System folder. And within the System folder, I'm going to drag those 3 PSX or PS1 BIOS files inside. And there we go. So we pretty much got that set up. So we're going to open up simplelauncher again and just configure for PlayStation 1. So remember, to add systems, you need to go to Edit System, choose a system, and I should find Sony PlayStation. And here we go, Sony PlayStation 1. And again, just like C64, this is going to ask for a system folder for your games. So set system folder, and it's obviously on my desktop, and we need to go back into simplelauncher again, and it's in my ROMs folder, and I'm going to just drag and drop my Die Hard Trilogy into the PS1 folder I created. So if I just left click on the PS1 folder, select folder, and it's going to automatically detect we're using CHD. If you don't want to use CHD, then obviously just use a comma, and you want to put Q. And again, we need to find the location for the emulator. As we know, this is in my simplelauncher folder. So emulators, Retroarch, and we need to select the retroarch.exe and open. Now we're not going to be using a second emulator for this, so I'm going to just delete the red text just there. And we also got to put in the emulator 1 parameter. So what we need to do is just backspace this because it's the wrong location. So to find a core to put this into the correct path under parameters, we're going to need to go to emulators again, Retroarch, cores, and Swan Station core is just here. So right click, copy as path, and then we can go back here and backspace, and Control and V to paste in the new core's location. And just remember, we need to delete those quotations just so there's one quotation on each side. And we're also going to backspace and delete Duck Station as well as the emulator 2 parameters because we're only going to be using the Retroarch core for this. So if I go to save and close this down, and we want to make a backup copy, and this time when I open up simplelauncher, I'm going to just scroll down to find Sony PlayStation 1 this time. So we got no game located in here, and the reason this is because I put the game into the wrong place. So go back to simplelauncher, ROMs, PS1, and because my .chd game is in another folder, it's not detecting it. So I'm just going to copy that and come out and just paste it here. And if we then delete that Die Hard Trilogy folder and open up simplelauncher again, and here's my game Die Hard Trilogy. So just open this one up and everything should be good to go. Okay, as we can see, PlayStation 1 is also working fine. Now, very briefly, I'm going to show you some video settings. Once we're inside of Retroarch quick menu, if we just go down to settings, video, scaling, from here we can change aspect ratio. If we want to put this to full, we can see the background now, it's changed to full screen. It's going to be very pixelated, and some games are going to look stretched to using this. So I'm going to put linear filtering on. If we go back into the game, as we can see, it does look rather stretched, so some games will look better than others, but we go to settings again, video, and right at the bottom we're going to find video filter. Just here we can apply filters to our games too, and this applies pretty much 95% of games you run through Retroarch. For example, I can put a filter on such as scanline. If I apply this by pressing the A button on my controller, go back into the game, so quit menu and resume. And we can't really see it because I've got bilinear filtering on. So settings, video, scaling, and I'm going to turn off bilinear filtering. Go back into the game. So there is a slight scan line there, but just remember settings, video, and video filter. Let's change this to upscale 1.5 times. Up into the game. And that's it for today's simple launcher setup, guys. So a lot of information in there for you to digest, such as converting your .bin and .q files into CHD, which is very beneficial, which I'm also going to add saves you space on your hard drive too, and it's better than having loads of random files all over the place. So anyways, if you liked today's video, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content. Also check me out on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. And just remember, I've got an entire playlist for Retroarch itself, so there's lots of information to be found. Anyways, until next time, stay retro.